Hello and welcome back. You are gaming with me, Brothgar, and this is Medieval Engineers, and today we are going to be continuing our investigation into the structural integrity side of things and the limit of stone structures. And we are going to be expanding upon what I talked about in my first episode, which many of you guys have watched, and that's not a word, also asked a lot of good questions. For example, Orion Stimmons here says, how tall can you build a wall that is more than just 1 by 1? Because that's what I focused on, the linear limit. He says something like 2 by 1, 3 by 1, and so on and so forth. So we're going to be investigating that as well. And he also has trouble playing the game because some people don't use structural integrity, and it had a couple of issues, and some of that stuff's been resolved here recently. And the other question that I've also gotten a lot of questions about is the flying buttresses. Now, if you don't necessarily know what flying buttresses are, you probably have seen the giant cathedrals that are built all over Europe, and they have the really, like, you know it when you see it. And what I'm going to be doing is investigating the possibility of whether structural integrity is going to apply to flying buttresses, or if they are simply not part of the game just yet. And I have my reasons why I don't think they are. At any rate, let's move on here into this example I have in front of me. What I was doing is, one of the things I try to do here in the game is going to be building, or is building, normal things that you can paste into your buildings quickly, so you don't have to build a staircase every single time, because there's a fair amount of components and you gotta like flip everything around to make it, and it gets annoying. Same with towers and stuff like that. I've pre-built a bunch of that stuff, and you can find it in the workshop. But what I have here is the stairs, and this used to be the absolute limit of stair structural integrity. So you can see here just 1 story, 2 story. But once we got up to 5 stories, this was like really weak. This piece right here would have exploded, or was dark red, and you wouldn't be able to actually have it without having some bracing next to it. Some changes in the game that, with an update that happened on March 17th, either just made this stronger or also kind of changed how that weight is distributed to the blocks below it. So we're going to be investigating that, and all in all, what that means is that staircases are going to be much more stable objects than previously have been. But let me move on to my next example here. This is at my concave castle. I'll be showing you guys my building phase of how I actually built this cool little castle thing, and this was built with structural integrity on, and I gotta admit it was quite a challenge. Now, one of the areas that tend to have an issue with structural integrity is anywhere you have an arch, because this is a weak block, and as you saw in my last video, when you take a weak block and you put a lot of tall, strong blocks on top of it, they just want to blow up on you. They don't want to work anymore. So inside of here, a place like this arch, which is one of those thin pieces, not the thick ones, it's many times weaker than that one, would have a really hard time. And this one was on the very verge of breaking, but as you can see right now, it's about as strong as everything else around it. So much more viable structure. And if we move on side here, I was definitely challenging myself building the staircase, which goes up, and this goes up 4 different stories and has a double stairwell on either side, on the other side of the building, and also has some columns that are placed along this staircase right here. And this structure was like a pain in the butt to build, because suddenly something would randomly explode, and it all had to do with columns. But I solved it before we had the update. But as you can see right now, everything here is, 50 shades of green, which is all good, as opposed to gray or anything like disgusting like that. Whatever those, I don't know. I stay away from that. At any rate, the whole thing here is much more viable. So let's go and investigate what are the couple of changes and how do blocks now work in such a way that they support each other. All right, so one more thing I want to add here is we have some new wooden blocks. So you have this nice square piece that you can build on top of, and works pretty good for rotors and things like that, things that aren't too terribly heavy. As you can tell here, it's only able of carrying 1 large full block, and anything more than that and it collapses. However, one thing that is different is that it does extend up to 15 blocks, just barely. I'm guessing that's because it's such a lightweight, and it just happens to be the exception to the norm. But on the next side of it is the arch piece right here, or the angled piece. Has nothing to do with arches. That one is only this tall, and you can figure it out. What is it, 10? Yes, 10 tall, and that's it. The double wide blocks act like 2 blocks right next to each other, no different than what you would expect. So that's a couple of the new blocks that have been introduced, and they continue to add new ones every update. So you know, just kind of, they all seem to be following the same rule that 14 blocks is the linear limit of their structural integrity. All right, so let's investigate what happens when you put a block next to a block. Does it actually help support the block that is not directly above it? Well, we're about to find out. What I have over here is an example. And as you can see in this example, I have 3 blocks placed on a 4-block square pattern, and then I alternate them. So back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The only thing that is really doing any of the work is going to be these side blocks here. Those are the only ones that are consistently straight up and down. And then right over here, the same sort of deal. So what do you see when you actually turn this on? Well, what you start to see is that this whole row here is about the same color. And this whole row here is about the same color. So this block is supporting the weight that is placed on top of it, even though it isn't directly in connection with the weight. So yes, it is spreading the weight out as you would kind of expect, but not so much in a completely logical way. So let's go ahead and place a weaker block underneath this just to see what happens, to see if it is at all doing anything different, or if it's starting to work in such a way that it is just taking the cross section. We have 4 wide all the way up. Well, when we place this down, as you can see here, this block is indeed about the same color as all the other blocks around it. So it is supporting in some way, shape, or form, covering that 4x4 area about the same amount of weight, which is interesting. It's an interesting dynamic to what's going on here. But when we do start to place other things down, you'll notice if I move on to a heavy block here, look at how much that helps things out. So there is some sort of dynamic that's going on that is figuring out that these loads are overhung and starting to stress the structure above it. But as we add to this, it's going to improve this structure all the way up. So it is getting stronger, even though it is getting heavier. So it's not taking just that cross section and stacking it on top of each other. There is some dynamics of what is placed on top of each other, and you know, so on and so forth. You can get that sort of idea going on there. So it does depend if you have overhung loads and not so much just the cross section that is being supported. So if we move on to this next example, what we can see here is that this one is kind of just an extra piece. But what happens when I place an object right here? Boom! We still get that same sort of air. Oh no, go away, go away! Ah! Okay, we still get that same sort of error when you place a block next to a block that is right on the limit of, well, that would have been bad, it would have saved it. It was right on the limit of breaking, then it's going to explode. I don't know why the game does that. It seems like it's a bit of a bug, but that's what is happening here. If you press K, you can remove all fractures in the game here, and that's just going to clean up your rubble. So that is a good thing to remember. Thank you for whoever it was that posted that on my page. Had to do with the other video I did about the hidden menu, that is the developer's menu, which is kind of useful, but doesn't have a lot of stuff in there that is really going to be working for us. So when we place a block next to this, I'm going to have to support it before that. But if I place a block over here, is this going to then apply to this bottom row and make it stronger? Yep, it is. So that is starting to spread the strength of this bottom row. And as I build onto this, even in this sort of regard here, I do have to make that a little bit stronger first in order to place blocks around it. You can really start to take this to the extreme, just making your blocks stronger and stronger. And this is interesting that this side here is lighter than it is over there. So now we're starting to get blocks that are stronger than others, and others that aren't supporting as much weight. It's kind of an interesting thing. So while we saw here in a 4x4 pattern, it didn't really matter that much based on what you had going on here. But as we start to add more blocks and we spread that out, not all blocks are created equally or supported equally in this regard. So we can actually take some of the load off of this block by placing a block that isn't directly next to it. So this whole pattern just starts to really work its way out to the point where you can really make a strong structure. And when you start to think about it, one block down has 8 blocks around it that can support weight as well. But how far does that weight then spread out? Well, for that, we cannot use this example. We have to come over here to where we have our original block, which is going to be 14 tall, and we're going to see just how much weight is supported by a block that is placed next to a load. So right here, this is on the verge of exploding, and it may blow up if I put a block here. No, it does not. Okay, so right here we can see that 2 blocks next to each other are going to just about split the load. You can see that both of them are the same color here, and that means that we can add another block on top of here. We've increased our total limit by 1. So the first question is, Orion Stimmons here, yes, you can make objects that are going to be taller based on how many blocks you have placed next to each other. But what is the limit of this? How far can we take this sort of idea? Can we just build a giant pyramid that goes on forever? That's an interesting idea. I'm gonna get to that later, but let's figure out just how many blocks we can put next to each other. If we place one that is not in the right place, it's not going to do anything, in case you were wondering. But if we place it right next to here, yes, we have now taken this weight and divided it by 3. If you divide it by 4, oh, what we start to see is that you trail off as far as how long things are going to be measuring that weight out. So what I've found here is that most of your load is going to be supported in those first 3 blocks that are next to the weight. So that means you can build this out, not only the first row, but the second row, in order to build up the amount of structural integrity of your building and have that all be even across the playing field there. So that is the rule of 3s right there. If it's 3 wide, that is your maximum structural, and you can take this out this way as well if you really want to. So there you go, you can do that and then really try to break your game by doing this. But yeah, at any rate, there you have it. That entire block there is supporting about the same amount of weight, even though it's interesting, but it doesn't have a lot of different shades of yellow that you can see right there. So that's going to be the limit of how much supporting blocks you can have for your load. And you can take this and spread it out. Again, not only just the 8 blocks around it, but however many more there is around that as well. So let's take that concept and put it into a real world test. My tongue is getting twisted. And see just how tall we can build a building using the same block, mind you, and see how big we can build it, basically. And that'll be kind of interesting. All right, so welcome to the tower. What I have here is based on that 3 rule I had, that 3 blocks next to your weight, your main weight, is going to be what takes the majority of the stress. I have built a 7x7 block, which is 49 blocks in total, which means we should be able to build a really tall tower, is basically what I'm saying here. So let's go ahead and do it and see how crazy we can go. So I'm going to start off here by making 13 blocks tall. Nothing is exploding, but you'll see, well, there it is. There it is. We cannot go any taller at this point. So how tall can we do a 2x2 block? Now there are a couple of crazy concepts of how this can be done. Do I just start with a giant base, take it 14 up, and then start cutting it back until it seems to want to go higher? I don't know. That's one thought. The other way is, do I start with the lightest possible structure and then move on up from there? And that's another interesting idea. But there's a couple of theories of how this could be done, and if you have a different theory, let me know in the comment section below. However, I'm going to be starting with a full base and then reducing it as I see fit. So we'll see how it goes. But there's probably some equations out there you could do if you really wanted to go that far into it. Alright, so welcome to the massive tower now, and we are 8 stories tall right now, or 8 blocks, and things are starting to look a little interesting here. A lot of yellow is starting to show up here. It's getting a little bit darker at the bottom, so I think I'm going to go ahead and cut this back, and we'll see what this does for us. Alright, so there we are. This is 14 tall, and as you can see, we are a lot stronger than we would be with just a singular column. But then again, we already knew that was going to be the case. But as this is a solid chunk of stone, it's really not going to do you a lot of good. And as we see inside of here, some things are starting to get a little bit stressed. And that's kind of interesting because there are some areas that are exposed to a lot more weight, especially with all these giant blocks on top of it. So before we continue this tower, let's go ahead and take a look at some of my other diagrams I have created for you. Alright, so welcome to my pyramid wall. This wall is 14 units tall, and then it gets one shorter every time you go down. So it is 14 by by more than 14. But what happens is when you turn this on, look at how interesting this is. This diagram is actually pretty informative when you start to look at it. What you see here is that this being our peak of weight is also the peak of load down here for your adjacent blocks, and as the weight drops off to either side, what you see here is that things are again dropping off. But it's kind of interesting that it doesn't spread out just layer by layer. It doesn't average everything out. It's you know, it is what it is. A picture says 1,000 words at this point, and I don't really know how else to describe it, but I found it really informative. However, if I were to take this exact same shape here, which I think I'll try to do. I'll try. And I'm going to place it in the same spot this way, which I know I've done this before, and what you end up with is forget it. You end up with something like this, which is just the same thing, just with two different directions. Does it get stronger? The answer is no, not really. Those objects there, if you were to build on top of them, can go 20 stories tall, or 20 blocks tall, whichever one we're going to be calling it, but it doesn't really change how dark this base is. It's still about the same thing, and what you have is the same amount of weight on the same amount of area. So therefore, you're back to your linear limit of not making things stronger because they really aren't getting lighter as you go up, no matter how many different directions you give it. So this here is going to be just as weak as this here, which is my Windows 95 desktop background sort of building, which is just a bunch of blocks, and it's all built in a pyramid and working in 3 dimensions this time, building its way back. Man, that's pretty cool and informative all on its own. Some slight differences, but I've noticed also some blocks that are just, once you start to cut away at an object, they just go all kind of weird. Yeah, all in all, though, it's about the same amount of load the entire way. What is really interesting, though, is when I start to build on top of this, and then we continue out. So let me cut this back so that we're just dealing with the triangle itself. And this is really interesting. What happens is when I start to build on top of this, we'll see that weight start to change down low. So we've already increased our maximum height by quite a bit there. And as we can see, we are now about to blow out this bottom column. However, it's much taller than it was previously. So as we continue this up, we'll get to a point where we can break the tower. There we go. So now we are breaking out the back side of my pyramid, but the pyramid is still standing, which is kind of cool. It's interesting. So if I build this out here and add some more weight up here as well, not only are we going to be breaking the tower below us, but we're going to be making this taller so that we can take that up even higher. The interesting thing here, though, is that as we add weight to the top of this structure, we are destroying the base of it at the same time. I mean, you can see it and feel it, and now the top is starting to fall down. But the idea is, just how far could you take this idea to where a structure is just as strong as it is concave, and it looks like it is. Ooh, it's having a bad day here with the physics. But there is a build somewhere out there that I think is going to be a fun challenge at some point to see just how big you can build a pyramid. And as it would seem here in the physics of medieval engineers, that a building is going to be stronger hollow than it will be solid. How about that? Alright, so now that we have learned a bit more, and stuff is breaking because I saved it at the wrong time, and please don't take out my giant tower. Okay, yes. Much gravity around here. Much gravity, much destruction. This thing likes to fall down. This whole array. Oh, and the sun is working on me again. I kind of wish that was off by default. And I don't get the weird random towers in the distance now. Game slightly broken since the update. Let's move back to the tower, though. As we saw here, inside of here, using the fly cam, which is going to be your F8. And we're going to go inside here and notice that there are some blocks that are getting close to exploding. So what we need to do is reduce the weight here. And as we saw over there with the pyramid thing, that yes, the inside of your structure can collapse and leave the outer structure somewhat intact. I don't really know. It'd be interesting to see how tall this building would go if I just kept going in its same manner and then let the inside of it explode. That's so curious that I'm gonna have to make a copy of it. And maybe I'll even do that in this episode. Don't blow up. Game is lagging. Whoa, okay. Okay, that's obviously, wow. Okay. Well, we'll exploit this one here and we'll watch it explode here eventually. First and foremost though, what I'm going to be doing here is reducing a bit of the weight. So every other block from here is going to go down 4, and I'm just going to fast forward through this. All right, so the base is a little bit stronger now that I've started to reduce the weight up top. Ever so slightly. I've taken everything that is one complete block and then taken away every other row above that in an alternating pattern of awesomeness. And it seems like, yeah, we're still got some blocks that are pretty darn close to exploding, which makes you wonder if we aren't better off just building this center of the column here completely hollow. I'm not against it. All right, base level, nothing but grass. Meow. That's kind of cool. All right, so this one is now using 6 blocks, and I've added 3 more to it. And if I look down the center, no, looks like we're doing well so far. Now let's continue on to 4 blocks. Even though what I have an issue with now is that I don't have blocks that are right next to each other. All right, so we are now 20 blocks tall, and it looks like we are doing all right. Let's continue this 4 pattern and see if we blow up once we get to 24. So this is 21, 22, 23, 24, and it looks like we're holding in there just fine. Things are starting to get stressed here at the bottom. So maybe it's worthwhile to add that center support now and see if we can't shore up some of those blocks. So we are at, what was it, 24? And this gives you a good idea. This center block is very red. I can't see it now. Where'd it go? Oh, I don't know what I'm looking at. Okay, so yeah, that block there kind of reveals just how much stress we have going on here. And there's a lot of it. So there are probably some parts up here that are just doing nothing. And you can start to see which ones those are. The ones that are off on an angle are useless. So they might as well come off the structure here in order to make it stronger, which is a good thing to know because it isn't, they support by supporting the block that's next to them, not by supporting the block that is at an angle to them. Good to know. Good to know. We're learning stuff here. So we know that those top blocks, these towers here, can support up to 14. And since they are just 4 individual columns all by themselves, then it doesn't make any sense. But what we've done here is remove some unnecessary weight, and it looks like we can shoot for the sky yet again. So let's add another 4 blocks on top. 5, 26, 27, and it looks like I'm starting to have some issues down here. I'm gonna want to brace these and start building some support into them. So if I place 1 block next to them, that's gonna make them stronger. If I look down the center, I should be good to go for 28. I would hope. Yeah, looking all right. Thank you for the quick save, by the way, game. All right, so we got a 4-block wide pattern, 28 stories tall now. We have doubled the amount of height you can get out of these blocks, which are all the same weight, just by building them next to each other. And these up here are not supporting each other, so that's kind of cool. That is pretty cool. Which makes me wonder why I'm building it the way I am, because these are not that easy to connect to each other. But what all I'm gonna do is probably have to start building 3 wide at top. Whatever. But in order to keep going up, I need to support it down here first. But I'm not going to continue. So here goes 20, 29. And we are now at 30. That's pretty cool. Support it down low. 31. Oh, and we have reached the destruction level at 31 tall. Bummer. But only half my tower went down. So that's kind of cool. 31 was the limit of how tall I could build this structure in the manner I did. And it doesn't seem like I had it the best plan when I first started off here. Just because I ended up with these 4 individual columns, which seemed to mean that I needed a lot of weight in order to continue supporting them. So I'm going to back it off here and see if I can get it up to something higher. So let's quick save it, but I will just move through the process really quickly. More stuff randomly breaking when I spawn in. Cool. Alright, so the tower as it stands now is 27 tall. And I built a decent base. So now I can support this like this. And like that. And then continue to build on up from there. 33, and what we can see now is I need to add some more support down low. So 33 tall. Here we go. Building out that base. Now I gotta build this up too. So there we go. So 33, and we'll take this now to hopefully 34 without stuff exploding. Shooting for 35. I think this is the tallest structure I've ever built in structural integrity now. 35 tall. Whew. And how is it doing down here? Well, it seems to be doing all right. There doesn't seem to be a lot of stress down low. 35 tall thus far. See, now this sort of methodology here of what I'm building, which is the lightest structure possible, and then I add a block each time, is probably a lot more of a logical tactic of seeing just how high we can build rather than building with a giant blob first and then trying to cut it back. Because this is the minimum structure needed in order to support the weight above it, which makes a lot more sense. But hey, I didn't start that way. Maybe you can. How tall am I? We're going again. 36? Oh, explosion from where? Everywhere. It just detonated on itself. Oh no. It's going down. Oh, lagging out big time. It looked like the base gave out. Interesting. Well, there we go. That is my new limit. It was a 35 tall. So if you wanted to build a bridge or something like that, and it's a good time to save. The tower is falling over, which means I'm not going to get another try. This is some serious stress on the computer too. Man, just trying to figure all this out. But hey, I think it's kind of cool. That was a fun experiment. And now look, now it has now inspired everything behind it to start falling down and breaking randomly. Because why not? Because I'm shaking the ground with such force that it needs to break. I mean, that would be happening if a giant tower like this fell down. And I didn't even get to the point where I just had 1 block tall. So I feel like there is a lot more potential for building up an even taller tower next time. However, with that same sort of thing now played out, and we saw how tall we were able to get that structure, let's see what happens when we cause the inside of this to explode and see what happens. See if the base just erupts by building a large blob on top of a large blob, and just seeing how far we can take that sort of idea. I don't know how tall it is. Really not paying attention. And there it is. The base is now exploding out of the bottom of it. And it's causing enough damage to the blocks around it to where it is just cascading through the entire structure here. And now it's going to fall to pieces. So that failed at 17 tall. And continues to fail. And continues to cause my computer to lag constantly. Oh, yeah. It's kind of cool how it breaks out like this, though. It's like the inside falls apart and then the wall falls off it and disintegrates and disappears from the screen. Oh, this would be a really cool tactic to use if you wanted to create, let's say you wanted to create a wall that is just going to be this jagged shape, and then you're going to use that as the outside of your castle. This would be an interesting strategy to kind of build that base structure that you could then copy and paste. Because I can copy this, or well, I used to be able to before it disappeared, and then paste it down as well as its known structure. Whatever, let's throw it here. Oh, this is a bad idea. Bad idea. Oh no! Why did I do that? Uh-oh. That was a perfect shot. Oh, it missed. Oh, more lag. Oh well. I don't know what I'm doing there. I'm just breaking stuff. Yep. Because breaking stuff is cool. Alright, so before I leave you guys and let you go off on your own here, there's two more things I want to cover. And that is going to be using the arch piece in something that is a tower. Even though I won't be building the full tower, I'm only going to be building the outside wall of it. But as you know, a staircase takes up a 4x4 block. And then at some point here, in order to get into the thing, you need to have one of these arch pieces. Now, in previous times, this used to be nearly impossible, and you're better off leaving a open hole than you were to stop time from changing on you. Back to what I was saying, because the moon was interrupting what I was talking about. You're better off leaving a hole in your tower than putting an archway in, because, well, it would just explode on you. So, is that still a case? Let's find out. Alright, so here's just kind of a mock tower. And previously, in previous builds of this game, this archway would have exploded by now. But as you can see, this entire bottom layer here is holding out really good. And it looks like we can continue to build this up if we wanted to and take it into the sky, making your towers a much more feasible object. And those archways are finally usable as opposed to just kind of a roll of a dice whether or not they were going to explode or help you out. Ah, there we go. It failed halfway through 13 tall. Just to give you guys an idea. More explosion, more rubble. And luckily it's falling away from everything else because I put the door on this side. Yeah. Which leads me to another point. Do structures have overhung loads in such a way? There is kind of evidence of that. But is a flying buttress a feasible object? Alright, so over here I have my mocked up cathedral. And as you can see here, it's working out pretty good. And I have a couple of flying buttresses somewhat placed on the side here. Ideally, a flying buttress is going to be half up the wall. And the reason a flying buttress exists is to keep the mass of the building as it is and has a roof on top of it, to keep those thin walls, which the walls in those cathedrals are much thinner than they would be in as far as a castle, which very thick walls like my pyramid over here. And that is to keep the walls from bowing outward. Now, the opposite side of things, to keep them from collapsing inward, as you may or may not know, many of those cathedrals from a top perspective are in the shape of a cross, which makes sense based on, you know, based on what it is. And to keep the structure from falling inward, they have metal chains that they would place halfway up the structure that would be placed in hot, and then as the chain cooled, they would contract, and that keeps tension on the inside, which is a tactic we still sort of use today in reinforced concrete, or preformed concrete, or pre-stressed. A lot of those different little things, it's same concept, but many, many years ago. So the idea of a flying buttress means that it has to support a wall or a load that is trying to expand and not so much support vertically. However, I feel like the game is only calculating in the vertical and not so much trying to cause walls to bow out, which means flying buttresses are probably more aesthetic than anything in the game currently. So right here I have a weight, and as you can see, these flying buttresses really don't do anything for the structure at all. But it's kind of hard to see how that all works out. There's not a really good example that I can give you right here, but I've built another prototype in this shape, which you can see right here. So we can head on over to that experiment. But what I have here is a couple of those arches, by the way. If you take a single piece arch and you were to place it backside upwards in here, so you place one and then you hold Alt to place it on top of the other block. So it does kind of continue over. It doesn't look quite as good, but it does create a nice sharp, sharp look, which is different than what they had back in the day where it was just a straight arch like this, which wouldn't support as much weight as one like that. So that's important. That's an important angle, but it doesn't really apply in our physical game world. All right, but proof of concept. This is a block over here that had fallen down, and then I repasted it to the ground. So just kind of proof that gravity is not working like we think it is. It's much more stressed at the back here and then continues out. So it's still calculating along the line of the blocks here. And you can sort of see that in this example here, and I'll just give you an idea as I cut things back because it decided to explode on me. But that's all right, whatever. Happens sometimes. Welcome to the game. And what I have here is the same object, just pasted back to the ground. And as I build out a load here, what you're going to start seeing is a cantilevered load that will have stresses in different places than what you would expect. So if I not explode stuff, let's just build it right here. So as I build this out, what you see is that things are changing color very, very quickly. And it is not calculating like you would expect it to, because this is much more, you would expect it to be much more vertical, but it's simply not. What it is trying to do is calculate a overhung load. So if we were to take that same sort of idea, and maybe I can build it here and show you a little bit better since that one is connected to the ground, it's trying to fall down. It's trying to fall this way rather than this way, if that makes sense. Because what you're getting here is a darker block higher up, and that's the proof of a overhung load, as you see here, or an unsupported load, maybe not overhung, unsupported load as it's trying to fall, trying to fall backwards. So there you have it. Then gravity takes over and it just doesn't work out. So it's not, objects aren't trying to fall over even though that they look like that. All right, so all of this brings me to my test over here. And what this is a load that is placed on an angle right now. So the idea is that an arch uses loads that are trying to fall in on each other to support more weight and divert that weight down the legs. The same thing would work with two objects placed at 45 degrees trying to fall on each other. They should offset some of that load from down low and place it on stuff on top. Same theory, same sort of thing, not the same shape, but all in all, it should work out. So let's go ahead and reduce this test a little bit, just because I know that it randomly likes to explode when I do this test. So let's bring this one over and paste it next to each other. Now, if flying buttresses are ever going to be a thing, its structure will become stronger when I paste it here. If not, then it's really not, it doesn't care. It doesn't care. Paste it down, and it doesn't care. So there you go. What you have here is a structure that is just as strong on its own as it is with two objects placed next to each other. Still kind of cool though. Definitely cool. I mean, that's bringing some ideas in case you're thinking about stuff. That's cool. Now, just to kind of do due diligence, let's see what happens. Whoa, when we try to connect the base. Random stuff. Saw that triangle, or the little triangle block tried to It's now being supported vertically rather than being supported from the side. Oh. Oh, it got weaker. It got weaker when you connected the two. Go away. Go away, blocks. Oh, don't break. Don't break. Alright, well, welcome to physics in the Medieval Engineers. Don't always make sense. Still definitely a cool game, though. But there's one last test. How much can they support? Because colors can only show so much. Right? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. What? Oh no. Oh no. No! What button do I press? What? How have we ended up like this? No, I don't want to paste it like that. What? What? Okay, yes, I have now found one. Let's see how many blocks we can stack on top of this until it explodes. We'll place it out here on the edge. 3 blocks. Okay, 4, 5, 6. Still good. 7, 8, 9. Ooh, we're getting close. This next one's gonna do it. 10. And just right when it saves, everything blows up. Ooh, but we created that wall sort of looking thing that I was talking about earlier. Neat. If I copy that, I should be able to paste it. Ooh, I like that. So there we go. It failed after 9 blocks. So the same idea over here should happen when I paste down more than 9 on top of it. Yep, there it goes. It has now failed as well. This did not make it any stronger at all. So there you go, guys. That's my conclusion. I don't think flying buttresses are a possibility in the game just yet because the physics simply don't work that way. But hey, you know what? If you got some different ideas or different thoughts of whether or not I can get a flying buttress to work in the game, let me know in the comment section below. But until then, thanks for watching, guys. I will see you next time. It's been fun. It's been great. I hope you found this video somewhat informative or maybe slightly enjoyable. If you did, maybe leave a like on the way out. Let your friends know what's going on here in the world of medieval engineers. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Peace. Brothgar out.